Ciao.
Rare, a rare treat.
Well, a lot of room,
When you keep emus, you got to have a lot of room.
Mm-hmm. It's probably
back too far. But there was one thing that you mentioned yesterday that I'm kind of curious about, and it kind of ties into what we want to talk about today as well. Adam Christianson, by the way, everybody, Adam Christianson of the MacCast is here with us, online at MacCast.com or on Twitter at MacCast, if you want to keep up with him. You actually said yesterday, and for people who missed it, we were talking yesterday about the fact that Linus Torvalds wants to be able to run Linux probably natively, although we talked about the possibility of virtualization. Wants to be able to run Linux natively on the M1 Macs. And you said yesterday there's no real value in it for Apple to sell a machine that you can run another operating system on. I mean, that's only kind of true, right? Because they're trying to sell so much into their services and things like that. I mean, you're still talking about a $800 to $1,000 to a $1,200 piece of hardware that they would still make a margin on.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just not Apple.
No, it's
right?
not where they're going. I understand that. Yeah. I mean, they did that.
I mean, what's the incentive? I think, even if there was monetary incentive, frankly, they just don't care to.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, there was definitely reason to when they were making the x86 transfer, because there were too many people. I mean, just letting people know that they would be able to continue. I'm not saying any of that right. But letting people know that they would be able to move from one side to the other as far as going from Windows to Mac, right? Mm-hmm. Letting them know they could keep running their old, applications and things like that, even keep running their old operating system. There was a reason to do that with the x86 transfer from PowerPC to x86. You're right. There's no reason to do that this time, especially.
Yeah, back then, right, there was not as much support for Apple, and not like Apple's market share has gained exponentially, but I think software-wise, we're in a much better place with Apple, especially with things like Office and Windows and Office, or not Windows, but Office for iOS. You've got, all the Adobe stuff is still going strong. Like, there's very few applications I can think of where there isn't a Mac version, at least the big players, right? I'm sure there's more obscure, more specialized things, but yeah.
Well, I will tell you right now, and I'll go ahead and head off the email. I have a listener to this show who I'm not sure if he's a listener to your show or not. We've never talked about it, but there's a guy named Dr. Robert Hurt, actually, who is doing a lot in virtual reality right now. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he's having to run off the Mac operating system. But also being a scientist, there's a ton of stuff that just he's still having to run boot camp. So,
sure.
But you're getting into really specialized stuff at that point. When you're talking about the average consumer, then, yeah, you're right. The software support is largely there.
Well, it's also why Apple's transition is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a year transitioning, and I think you'll still see them selling Intel versions of their machines for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
At least one or two models. It's going to push more and more toward M1, obviously, but they're going to leave a couple in the pipeline for exactly that situation.
Do you think they're going to leave that, though, for the average consumer, or is that going to be what they're selling to business?
I think they'll leave it for the average consumer. I mean, they have in this round. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I mean, I think over the next year, I think there will always be one or two in each sort of category where it's hey, you can still get the Intel version of this. It's probably not going to be the one most people want, right?
Yeah.
But, it'll still be there.
That actually does lead us, and really, I mean, yesterday and today could have been just one long conversation, because the thing I wanted to talk to you about today is the new lease on life that we have found for the Mac. In fact, there was some article that I was reading right before we started. I think it was a Barron's article that was waxing rhapsodic about, how much people suddenly care about the Mac. And it's interesting because they said, well, this really turned on Apple consumers, and investors should care as well. The thing is, he was waxing so rhapsodic that I never actually got to the part where he said why investors should care, but I think I can kind of figure it out. I can't tell if I'm too far inside or if it's actually true, although this Barron's article would seem to support like average people, or average people talking about the Mac now, or are the people who have always talked about Apple just talking more excitedly about the Mac? I mean, there's new life in the line. I can't tell if that line is, further out than it has been before.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I have a feeling it's more the former than the latter, right? I think it is more the insiders, the industry, watchers, people who care about this technology are seeing that. But I also think that ultimately that maybe translates over a little bit to the consumer, but not until that point where a consumer is maybe getting around to needing a new machine. And so what happens, I think, is that media excitement, the insider excitement around the Mac then starts to leak over into the consumer space. And the consumer that maybe has been on a PC but maybe has an iPhone, or has maybe tried an iPad or some other Apple product, or is maybe using an Apple service like Apple Music, says, hey, maybe there's something to this Mac thing, right? There's a lot of buzz going on. Sounds like Macs are faster than the Intel machines I can buy. They've got some machines that are, a decent value. And maybe they consider buying them. I mean, Apple's still saying that, 50% of people that are buying Macs are new to the Mac. So I can only see this propelling that further.
What's weird is, even before the M1, though, you saw that. I mean, they came out at the September earnings call and said, what was it? The previous record for the Mac, I think, had been $7.4 billion in a quarter. In the September quarter, it was $9 billion. And I had a debate with somebody, I can't remember who, over the past couple of weeks. Might have been Mike Rose 2 weeks ago on this show, saying that, I mean, it feels like a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are largely, we're not all, but largely a lot of us are working from home now. A lot of us are schooling from home. And rather than buying a $400 machine that we're going to have to replace in a couple of years, now that we're all staring at this machine morning, noon, and night, people started to show up and say, hey, maybe I'll go ahead and drop a bit more dosh. And then Apple said, oh, by the way, here's this amazingly, 2.5 times faster, 3 times faster, whatever machine that you're really going to, now start to hate the computer you just bought 2 months ago.
I think that's part of it. But again, I do think like this buzz around the Mac is going to drive those numbers even further. And I think it's going to also help, like I said, push the people in that that are in that halo for one reason or another. And there's lots of reasons to be in sort of Apple's halo, I think, at this point. And when now there's focus on the computers, and maybe people have been ignoring the computers, they've been going on iPhone, iPad. Oh, iPhone's the big one. We know that, right? There's a lot of people that have iPhones that don't have Macs. Yeah. When it does come around for them to get a new machine, a new computer, I think it pushes them further in that Mac direction. And I think that's good for Apple, and that is going to be good for the company and for investors in the long run.
More of our conversation with Adam in a moment, but first a word from Remote HQ, letting you collaborate as if you are in the same room. Because we're mostly not now, as far as work is concerned. We're missing those spur-of-the-moment sparks that happen when you see somebody jot down a note or doodle an idea. Remote HQ is great for that. Notes in a whiteboard can be shared, seen, and even edited by everyone live in real time. You can work with the apps you're already working with, Google Docs, Miro, Dropbox, and more, and all without any downloads or installations. Send out a link and your meeting or work session is practically underway. If you're still struggling to find the right collaboration tools for your business or personal projects, you really ought to try Remote HQ. Go to remotehq.com/partnerships/minutes for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the code MINUTES for 3 months free. Give Remote HQ a try. Go to remotehq.com/partnerships/minutes for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the code MINUTES for 3 months free. Now, let's get back on the M1 with Adam Christianson. So talk to me then, if you would, about because what's interesting is you and I are talking about it in terms of comparison, but I'm trying to figure out where that comparison is going to happen. Because, like at Best Buy, I don't know. Well, at Best Buy, I don't even know how we're going to buy computers, honestly, in the next little while. Because CNET, right. I don't think that the average consumer necessarily knows to go to CNET to compare things. I don't necessarily know what CNET is going to be writing about at that given time, right? I mean, you could say if you go into Best Buy, then you can compare, that machine to this machine, except Best Buy then had that sort of like little Apple area that they had, which is not to say you can't walk over there and compare, but you can't do a side-by-side comparison. It seems unlikely that somebody that makes an appointment to go to an Apple store is going to hear a lot about how this is so much faster than the latest Seagate or Dell or whatever. Right. Because once you're in the Apple store, you're buying a Mac. The question is, which one are you going to buy? I mean, especially now, if you make a personalized shopper appointment to go in and see these machines, chances are you've decided you're buying a Mac. The question is just which one. I guess what I'm wondering is, how does the marketing go on this thing, or does that matter? See also the September quarter where people were buying them, without the rev of the M1.
Yeah. Are you talking about like just consumers in general? You're talking about people who would normally been buying a Mac? I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about, Adam. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't know how the marketing of this thing works, because the thing is... From Apple's perspective, or just from...
Well, and to the consumer. I mean, as we talked about at the beginning, I honestly don't know whether this is something that's catching the public's attention, or if it's just, something that's got the people who are already excited about Apple really excited about Apple. I mean, do you have to be a gearhead? Do you have to actually care about computers, not just using a computer, but actually care about computers to know this is happening? And does Apple care about reaching people outside of that? Or is the assumption, we got so much other stuff going on? I mean, everything we do is a lure. Eventually, they're going to come to these computers, and when they do, they'll be the fastest.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the latter. And I can just tell you, I mean, I don't know the direct answer to your question, but I can tell you from my experience what happens in my world, and I've seen it happen with other people in my community who basically are made up of, the gearheads, the tech heads, the guys who are really into the Apple stuff, right? Or just into technology in general. We become, and I hate this word and I'm going to use it in a different way than it typically is. We become the influencers in our like little sphere, right? Our community bubble that's around us. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about, Instagram and Facebook. I'm talking about friends and family and the people directly or indirectly. Mm-hmm. And so what happens to me is a lot of people know that I'm into this technology and stuff like that. And what happens is, and it's happened more than once, when Apple starts getting a buzz around something, they will come to me and say, hey, I heard that, Apple's got this new processor. I heard that Apple, the new iPhone does XYZ, or I heard that. So they heard some sort of thing, and then they're coming to me for more information, validation, and hey, what do you think? Should I get an iPhone? Should I get a Mac? Should I get a, so that's how it works for me. And I'll always tell people straight and point them in the right direction, Apple or not, depending upon what their needs are. So that's how it works for me. So I think, again, what happens is the buzz that's going on, it sort of resonates out, and the consumer, the average consumer, gets bits of it. And then I think they do come and look to the experts wherever they are, whether directly like me, or maybe they're looking at, PC Magazine, or I don't know, whatever websites are out there that people go to. But again, when it starts spilling over into like USA Today and New York Times and LA Times, they're seeing it there, right? So the tech sections of those sorts of publications and websites, I think, do that. And so again, then they come to folks like myself and get more information. So that's how I see it work.